Okay, we're holding towards the end of Hilchos Taaruvot. We pretty much completed Siman Kuf Yud. That is, as far as the Mechaber and the Ramor are concerned, and the Shach and Taz on the last halachas in Kuf Yud. But before we go to Kuf Yud Aleph, which is the last Siman in Hilchos Taaruvot, I think it's a good idea to review the various klalim, the various rules of Sfeka, which is what the Shach does. Very important area. After all, a good part of Taaruvos deals with Sfekas of all sorts. And we've come across an interesting concept called Sfeka. Sfeka means that we no longer have one doubt to deal with, now we have two doubts. The more doubts, apparently, from what we've seen in various scenarios, the lesser the chances are, statistically, that's looking at it simplistically, statistically, if we can use that word, that there is an Isser involved. So, in dealing with a situation where we have to determine the kashrus of something, it is okay to use statistics. That's my way of saying it. In other words, we're going to go through, what we're going to do now is going to go through the various scenarios, today and Thursday, and perhaps into next week, of what constitutes a real suffix or a real Sfeka. That's very important because suffix is easy. There's a suffix. Is it asur? It's not asur. What's the din? What do we do? What's the halacha? We have a doubt legabe this taruvos, this mixture. We don't know if something is kosher or treif. That's one suffix. That's easy. But when we want to introduce Sfeka, what we're trying to achieve is to make something mutter that would otherwise be asur, if it would only be one suffix. And the reason for that is because many times we're dealing with a suffix deraisa. In other words, the Isser involved is a deraisa Isser. It's also in the Torah, treif or kosher. And we have a klal, suffix deraisa lechumra. Suffix deraisa lechumra means that if I have a suffix, we don't take a chance. And there's actually something which is very interesting in halacha that says chamira sakanto mi'isuro. If something is a suffix to you, if it's poison or not, you don't take any chances. There's no such thing as a derabanan. It's a danger. You're out in the forest and you're hungry. Or you're curious. You're not hungry, but you're curious. And you see some mushrooms. But you're not an expert as to which ones are poisonous. I don't recommend that you try it.
Okay.
Because some of them are extremely poisonous. Within a short time, the person will be in great trouble. In need of help.
Or no longer in the...
Yeah. So anyway, that's called chamira sakanto misura. When it comes to sakana, it's chamira. It's even more serious. But when it comes to isura, there's some leeway. And we have to understand a little bit what this leeway is all about. I mean, after all, we're dealing with a potential isur. We've seen a little bit about how bittul works. What does bittul say? Bittul, especially according to the Rosh, says, well, it's gone. If you have the required amount, it just cancels it out. It's no longer in existence. Of course, we have the various opinions that say they shouldn't eat the whole thing at once, so you're not mamash pogea be'isur. You don't actually go ahead and touch immediately the isur. So there are ways around it, how to do it, not to eat it all at once. But bittul is a din min Torah. It just works. The Torah says, there's a din, the minority is cancelled out by the majority. Unless, of course, you have something called tam. Tam is tam. Once you hold a tam is ke'ikar ha'isur, then you have to somehow dilute that tam. And you may need 60. Or you may need a kafela, which is some of the halachas that we've covered in the very beginning of Hilchos Taaruvot. But there's no doubt that bittul works, even if there's an isur vadai. Right? You don't see where the isur is. If you could identify it, obviously you would have to remove it, so we have a suffix where it is, but you have a roif that eliminates the problem of this so-called suffix. You can't see it. A suffix that you could somehow be mevarer, you may need to be mevarer. You may need to investigate and find it out. If there's a way you can filter it out, as we spoke about Biria with bugs and things like that. If there's a way that you can somehow get it out, you may need to do it. So that's concerning bittul. But here we have a new concept called Sfeka, which basically tells me that if I have numerous Sfekas legabe, if something is asur altogether, it may be mutter. And that's what we need to really analyze exactly. Under what circumstances do we say that? When is a Sfeka a true Sfeka? Last time we spoke briefly about this concept of Sfeka, in that, are we saying that something is mutter because of Sfeka because of roiv? In other words, is that what is driving it? In other words, this Sfeka is really has the koach, the strength of overpowering or resolving our doubts because it's just so strong, like roiv, in the same way roiv is? Or is it a separate din that tells us, you know what? There's so many Sfekas here, there's the two Sfekas, that therefore there's no Isser. In other words, it's so minute that the chances are that the Isser is probably not there. So that's what we covered a little bit last time as to what's going on in Sfeka. What is the concept of it? But
I have a question.
Yeah.
It seems to me that cases.
Yeah.
Perhaps this thing you
Yes.
are simultaneously saying, perhaps this thing, the 50-50.
Yes.
When I again say, perhaps this is not an is, I'm again saying, perhaps this thing.
Yes.
So in some cases, hypothetically, I turn it around and say, it's highly improbable that it's mutter, just like I can say it's highly improbable that it's.
Right.
But apparently, we say Sfeka to exclude the isser rather than the permission.
Everybody follow that? What is Hillel is trying to say?
Kind of like what it sounds like a prejudice against the isser. They say if we have a Sfeka, we kick the isser out the door.
Excellent.
And not the mutter out the door.
Right.
Which we want to keep out.
Yeah, we want to kick it
Well,
out. But
wonderful.
yeah. But remember, very good point. We're going to talk about it more next time.
Okay.
But all I will say this time is that there's something called a chazaka. Something starts out with a chazaka. This animal was kosher as far as I know till now.
But the food in front of me.
The food in front of me was. There's no reason for me to assume that it was treif until something else was introduced to pose as a problem that this may now be treif. And I'm going to give you examples later on, as you will see. But very good analysis. We're not being prejudiced here. We're trying to determine something based on a change in the status, a potential change in the status that will render it osir. May render it osir. It started off as kosher. So if it starts off as kosher, I need to eliminate the possibility that it's not treif. So first let's talk about Sfeka. Why is it mutter? Even in an Isser D'Oraisa we're talking about, right? The halacha is a real Sfeka, which will eventually, hopefully, clarify. A real Sfeka that everybody's in agreement that it is a Sfeka is mutter even in an Isser D'Oraisa. So why is it mutter even in an Isser D'Oraisa? So the Pnei Yeshua, I believe, brings down that the various shitas of the Rishonim, including the Rambam, the Ramban, and the Ran, they hold that the way it works is like this. When we say Sfeka D'Oraisa, one suffix, is lechumra, remember that? Sfeka D'Oraisa, one suffix D'Oraisa is lechumra, that din of Sfeka D'Oraisa lechumra is midrabanan.
Nice enough.
Okay, that's what they hold.
The isser is the horizon, but
The Isser D'Oraisa, but the suffix
That
is
it's still-
that it's still Asr is a D'Rabanan. That's what they hold. That's what the Rambam. Not everybody holds like that. But Yeshua explains that Rambam, according to the Rambam, and the Ramban and the Ran, who hold
Interesting.
that
So the
Sfeka
second suffix is a suffix Rabban.
Oh, exactly. You're Mechaven.
Very good, very good.
So once you say that that's a D'Rabanan, so when you have a Sfeka, it's a suffix D'Rabanan.
Very good.
Okay?
Very nice.
Good. So that's why Sfeka would be Lekulo. The Pre-Chodosh, as we explained last time, holds that the whole idea of Sfeka only works because of Roiv, as I said. In other words, it has a certain koach that is very similar to Roiv. I say similar, I'm trying to be careful because there's a machloikas, which we may speak about another time, about which one is stronger. We have Roiv, we have Chazaka, we have Sfeka, we have various things that are not necessarily equal. Some may be stronger than others. So, but the Pre-Chodosh holds that Sfeka has the koach of Rov, and therefore it works like Rov. Now, how does it work like Rov? He says basically that the first suffix, the first one, transforms the situation into palgo, half. It's half. Comes along the second suffix and cuts it into two other halves. So now you have more tzdadim of heter than you have of iser. You have roiv. Okay? You take that iser, you cut it in half. It's half-half, it's 50-50. Then you take that iser again, and you cut it up again in the second suffix of half-half. So you basically are giving the heter, the tzdadim of heter, more koach over the iser.
It comes 75 to 25.
What is that?
It comes 75 to 25%.
Yeah.
The first suffix makes it likely.
Right.
And the second suffix takes the 50, cuts it again in half.
Yeah.
So you have 25%.
Right.
That's what he's saying. Huh?
Right, pretty much. You have more tzdadim to heter. The Mishnah Lemelech holds that in a Sfeka situation, the Isur becomes a miut, the miuto. That's the way he calls it, which is a statistic concept. In other words, it becomes so minute, that's all he says. But it's another way of understanding how it works. It becomes so minute, the chances of there being there an Isur becomes so minute that we don't consider it Bechlal. Right, exactly. No, that's the Kesef Mishnah. Right. So you have the various perushim, as we've explained, of how to understand the way Sfeka works, if we accept Sfeka. Okay, now that we have that understood, hopefully, let's see the basic kind of Sfekas. Before we go into what determines a Sfeka, we have to understand what we've learned so far. We've seen, we've actually seen three basic kinds of Sfekas. And based on that, we will be able to understand the first three or more klalim in the shach. Even though there's quite a few klalim, a lot of them pertain to pretty much the same halacha. All right, you have what's called a sfeka beguf. Beguf means that in the same item, in the same object, the same person, the two sfekas apply to. Very important concept, because it will come up. The two sfekas, okay, as the Mechaber calls it, it's not lumping one suffix on another. It's a whole separate cheftza. The whole idea of sfeka is we're talking about a unique situation here that has come up, in that the whole potential isur has diminished as a result of multiple sfekas. But it's not because you have one suffix over another suffix. We're not lumping them, as I'll explain later on. 1 plus 1 is that it has become weaker and weaker as a result of more questions. So, for example, sfeka in a guf. The typical example of sfeka in a guf is something that's brought down in the Gemara in Ksubas, famous Gemara in Ksubas, in Daf Tes, where the Gemara deals with when do we believe the husband who makes a claim that his wife was not a virgin, he married her. She lost her besulim. It could make a difference. And he says, listen, very possible that she lost it while she was engaged. And in those days of the Gemara, engagement is not like engagement today where you send flowers and you make a vort, like some people do. Engagement was a partial marriage back then, and it usually could easily last a year. It was step one. It was a half marriage. It was serious. It was almost like a married woman. Meureses, she's called. Erusin.
Isn't that same?
No, today we do the erusin and the kiddushin under the chuppah at the same time.
Right, but the erusin you do under the chuppah is also
has the same. Sure.
Halacha.
So today we do it at the same time,
because of the wars between them.
Exactly. Yeah. So he claims she did. She lost the besulim.
You mean with the particular erusin?
No, not with him. He says Pesach pasuach matzati.
His question is by erusin. Right. Does that mean that I was?
No. Dave, when a man was engaged to a woman, there was no intimacy. Right. That was your question. No. Chas v'shalom. No. She was not. It was not consummate, as they call it in English. The marriage was not fully consummated.
But she already had this woman regarding other.
Yes. Regarding other men, she was semi-married. Yeah. Reserved, taken.
No.
It
would be an avera.
Sure, big avera. Yeah. Anyway, so you have a situation there we're dealing with, even though we're dealing with the ne'emanos that the husband is believed or not believed. The Gemara said, but wait a minute. There's a sfeka here about this woman. What's the sfeka about the woman? Because he says Pesach pasuach matzati. I found her to be not virgin. What's the sfeka? Safek whether she lost the besulim during her engagement, Did it happen then that she lost it? And even if she did lose it during that time, it could easily have been be'oines, not necessarily be'rotzoin. There's a difference between if a woman is violated, nicer word than raped, right? It was against her will, or whether she did it willingly. And guess what? Makes a big difference. The Torah gives us the various dinim of how to deal with such a situation. Okay? So you have to sfekas legabe the person. The Gemara's maskana there is that we're talking about one subject. So I'm not going to get into the Gemara on how does the Gemara, finalize or summarize the whole situation there, but it presents this potential sfeka situation there, where you see an example, for our purposes, of two sfekas in one goof, in a person. Maybe she did lose it, maybe she, during the time she was engaged. Yes, it's possible. And even if she did, which is what the husband is claiming, was it be'ones or be'ratzon? Okay, which could make a difference. All right, so that's an example of of a sfeka in a goof. That's why we're using that Gemara as an example of a sfeka on one goof, which is good. This is a real sfeka in one goof. Then you have what we've had all along in the last few halacha seifim, a sfeka of two taruvos. You have a taruvos, you have a mixture, and a piece of that taruvos, or portion of that taruvos, fell into another taruvos. Remember that? We spoke about the fact of whether you need 2 or 3 taruvos, like the Mechaber says. Many poskim hold you only really need 2 taruvos to allow for something to be mutter. Even, what's the question here? I mean, taruvos is taruvos. No, we're talking about obviously something which is not botel, afilu be'elef. And we want to be matir because of sfeka. So Mechaber says you need 3. The first one is already asum deraisa. Then, as the Shulchan explains, the first one is already asur. So then you're left with 2 to enable sfeka to work. You cannot have sfeka under 3. All right. Why does it work by kavua? We had a seif. That's a question on Mechaber. We have a similar question in the Ramah. Kavua is a little bit different. Kavua is not we explained that they happen to be, kavua is also a form of taruvos, right? But over there, the Chachamim were matir after this kavua became a taruvos. In other words, so it's not a real taruvos. It's different. The various explanations given as to why it works there. Mechaber says kavua. He doesn't know from which store it took, right? We said it's half. It's also, you don't know which store you took it from. One store is straight. Remember that case? And then he got mixed up. So here, somehow you need 3. All right. So over there, it's a little bit different. By the time it got to the taruvos, it has become a real roiv. Whereas here, you have a different problem. It's also right away, right? Midoraisa. And you need, in order to have a sfeka, you need to have 2 more taruvos. Okay. But anyway, that's the example of sfeka of taruvos. Whether you require 2 taruvos or 3 is depending on who you hold like. But you have 1 taruvos, a portion or a piece of that taruvos got mixed into another. Do you have a sfeka or not? You may or you may not, depending how you hold. But that's a taruvos sfeka form, right? It's not the example that we gave from the woman of guf echad. It's a different kind of suffix. You have 2 sfekas now, because you have 2 mixtures at 2 separate times. So you have 1 that fell in here. Even if you say that the isser fell in, what I'm taking now maybe is the mutter. Who says I grabbed the isser from the second taruvos? I can eat. Can I? Yeah, as long as you don't eat the whole thing. As the Shachin Tas pretty much want to say. You're safe. If you hold 2 taruvos, it's fine as long as you don't eat the whole thing at once. Because you're basically saying, what I'm taking now from the second taruvos has a sfeka. Is it the isser that fell in? Even if it is, who says what I'm taking now from the second pot is the original isser that fell in? So suffix, heter fell in, isser fell in. And even if the isser fell in, maybe what I'm taking now from the taruvos hasheni, the second taruvos, is really heter, not isser. That's called a sfeka of taruvos. Then, of course, we have the problem, which is what the Shach's first several klalim deal with directly. And that's a third kind of suffix. What's the third kind of suffix? When you have echad beguf, ve'echad betaruvis. Right? In Sif Tes, we spoke about that. We spoke about a suffix treifa shenis arev be'acherus. It's a suffix treifa that was mixed up be'acherus. Kulan asurus ad sheyeh behetek k'dei levatel ha'isur. Im hu midvorim hamizbatlim. שסופק הראשון, שכיוון שסופק הראשון היה בגופוי, אין להתיר מספק ספקה. Since the first, Mechaber says, since the first suffix, it was in its goof, it's a suffix trait for this animal. I'm not sure. It could be kosher, it could be trait. We had some suffix about it. But before we were able to determine the psak halacha, right, this piece got mixed into other pieces. And it's not from Vorma Mizbatlim. In other words, there's not enough to Mizbatel it. Okay, so that's fine. I would say, okay, even if it's not Mizbat, but I have a Sfeka. The first one is a suffix, Isser. Maybe it's not Osir. The second suffix is in the Taaruvot. Mechaber says, no, we disallow it. Why? This is not a real Sfeka. Because the first suffix is in the goof, in the animal. Is this animal, this piece of meat, kosher or treif? And the second suffix is a different kind of suffix. It's not in the animal, it's not in the same goof, it's a suffix in the Taaruvot, something completely different. So when Mechaber tells us a klal, he's already telling us himself the klal of Sfeka, that if a suffix, the first suffix is in the goof and the second suffix is in a Taaruvot, you cannot be matir because of Sfeka. Alright? So the Shach talks a little bit about this. And where do we take this from? This is based on an interesting Gemara in Be'ah, which Tosfos over there elaborates more about, where you have an egg that was laid on Shabbos, and maybe on Yom Tov. Now, you know, perhaps, you've learned Hilchos Shabbos, Hilchos Muktzeh, there's different kinds of Muktzeh. One kind of Muktzeh is called Noilad. An orange fell off the tree on Shabbos. You can't take it and peel it and have it for dessert if it fell off on Shabbos, right? It's the same thing with an egg that was laid on Shabbos. You can't have it. It was not ready yet on Shabbos, right? When it became ready, in other words, it was already muktzeh when it became Shabbos, okay? What if you don't know? Maybe it was laid in Yom Tov. It's still asa. Okay? So that's the Gemara. In other words, Gemara talking about an egg that was laid. So far, we have an example of one suffix. Is this egg muktzeh or not? What's the second suffix? This egg that we have a suffix about of when it was laid got mixed into 1,000 eggs. What do we do now? It's also. Wait a minute, Sfeka. Suffix if it was laid on Shabbos or Yom Tov. And even if it was laid on Shabbos and it's muktzeh, it's mixed. It's Taaruvot. Can't I just take some eggs with me and have them and make some Eir and Tzibale, as the Ashkenazim like to make? You know what Eir and Tzibale is?
Sure, my dad had it.
Eggs and onions, you know. Yeah,
although the Gemara says it's raw egg, it's raw.
The problem is over here, of course, you're right. It would be raw. So anyway, so what's the problem here? No, Gemara says it's Asr. So here we have a Ri, Rabbeinu Yitzchak and Rabbeinu Tam, that says as follows. According to the Ri, and that's the way they're paskening, apparently they're taking it from the Ri, that we're dealing here with the suffix Isser. It's a suffix when it was born. That's the way he teaches, that's the way he explains. And still, we see that even though this egg is a suffix, it does not give us a Sfeka. In other words, you do not have a Sfeka to be matter. So the Ri says from here, you see Sfeka when one is in the goof and one is not in the goof. One is in the Taaruvot here, right? But the eggs. One is in the goof, the egg. Yes or no? Asur or not? Now it's in the Taaruvot. So we see from this that Sfeka by goof and Taaruvot is not a Sfeka.
I think this is the point. What
yeah.
You say?
All right.
The suffix, I only have on the egg that laid.
Yes.
So I need for sure to have that egg that was laid in front of me in order to have that. If I take another egg that was not laid by this hen on that day, I have a suffix regarding it. Now the second suffix is, do I have the egg that was laid on the yontif in front of me or not?
Yes.
But if I don't know that it was for sure the egg was laid of yontif, I've also, it's become uncertain if this is the egg that has the first suffix.
Right.
So
you may say so, sure.
Is that the point?
Yeah, that is, you can definitely say that, yeah, even though they say it a little bit differently than you, but I like it the way, I like the way you presented it.
It comes close to what they mean?
It comes close, because in the end what you have here is not a true Sfeka regarding the exact same thing.
Right.
Right, yeah, very good.
If this is not the egg that was
No, yeah, exactly.
the first suffix,
Yeah, you don't really have a Sfeka concerning the same issue.
So regarding the Taaruvot, I only have one suffix.
Right.
But because
The Re wants to say from this that if you have here two Sfekas, what are they? This egg, was it laid on Yontiv or on Shabbos? And even if you want to say it was on Shabbos and it's muktzeh, but now it's mixed with 1,000 eggs. So I have an additional suffix anyway. So perhaps if I take one, it's okay. It's a Sfeka. Even if this egg was usher, who says I'm taking that egg right now when I'm taking one out of 1,000? And maybe it's a mutter, but even if it's usher, who says I'm taking that egg? The Re says, since the Gemara does not allow for it, we see from that the Sfeka, under these circumstances, where one of the Sfekas is in the guf, in the egg, and the second suffix concerns the Taaruvos, is not allowed.
why that's what I
The Gemara doesn't really say clearly. The Rishonim say the Re is right. A Sfeka in that case is not allowed, but not because of his reasoning, but because the eggs is a davar sheyesh lo matirin.
Is it because of the Rashi Shematirim or
Yes.
Rashi B'min?
No, davar sheyesh lo matirin.
Because the Rashi B'min would also answer.
Yeah, but that's something else. That's a Durabanan.
The
right?
Rashi B'min is a Rabbanan.
Yeah. Here, even
The
though davar
Rashi
sheyesh lo
B'min
matirin
is
is,
also
but it's stronger. It's stronger. Remember we spoke about that. It is a little bit stronger because you could wait.
Right.
That's why there's a question by davar sheyesh lo matirin by the Rabbanan. Do you say it too or not? So here, you could wait. You know, who says you have to have scrambled eggs now or whatever? You know. By the way, you know you can scramble eggs sometimes in the heat. If it's hot enough. Yeah. And you know, on Shabbos there's different halachas. The Gabe chamo told us chamo, and regular fire. There's different grades. Yeah, sure. How to make eggs on Shabbos too. Yeah, chanfer. Yeah, but that's the Rabbanan. Yeah.
The heat comes from the heat.
That's it, yeah.
You're allowed to scramble it in the heat.
Well, it all depends if it's out in the sun or if it's on top of a hot car. Because then the heat is not from the sun, it's from the car. There's a difference on what if it's a
Right.
Okay,
Right. Because
remember?
but only because of Mara's eye.
which is a toldo. It's a toldo of the chamo.
Yeah, because it's a toll.
It's a toll,
You
and
understand because the
right.
person doesn't know it's G, but
Right,
it's
exactly.
a
Yeah,
fire
yeah,
or-
yeah. So anyway, it's interesting. It's an interesting area. If you live in Phoenix, it may be Shayach. You have to maybe yeah. Or Vegas, yeah.
I heard people. You know the
Yeah.
famous case
In the valley, maybe, yeah.
You know the famous case with the Rebbe, another
Yeah.
Rebbe
Yeah.
teaching in school. The children to the crock pot became addicted.
Yeah.
And the wife was very upset because
Sure.
she had guests invited.
Definitely, yeah.
So he took all the children, and a lot of children, gave each one a magnifying glass. And they used the magnifying glasses, heat of the sun, and thereby cook the children. So the
Was this a real story?
yeah, real story. So the Rabbanim were very upset with him. Rabbanim were very upset. Said, use a magnifying glass. That's right. If you would just put it in the sun, okay. But use a magnifying glass.
You can, yeah. The halacha is you can't use magnifying glass. Yeah. Yeah. Where did they get so many magnifying glasses?
I don't know. It was a Rebbe, maybe.
It was a Rebbe?
Rebbe.
A Rebbe. Yeah.
Here's
Yeah. Anyway, what do you do if the crock pot becomes disconnected or you lose power like they did in the East Coast now? If you have a flame on, you're allowed to take it as long as it didn't cool off and put it on the blech.
on the blech.
On the blech, if you have a blech covering the flame, you can take from one place to another place. From fire to fire, you can take as long as you have a blech.
But on the blech,
If it's still hot.
No blech.
No. Only if it's not in a pot, and if it's a dover yovish, and if it's
You
so
right
yeah,
to it.
right. There's different conditions, yeah,
Right.
and not directly on the fire, on the part of the blech on the side, yeah,
That's only because of Mara's eye, no?
yeah. In a place where it's not going to be nisbashel, it won't be yatzela this. Here you would be able to put it anywhere on the blech. If you have to, if it's hot, if it's still hot, or the other choice, if there's an Erev, you can take it to a neighbor and put it on his blech. Or on top of his crock pot. And the third choice is you can have cold cholent.
That's really a choice.
All right.
L'chayra, is it a choice? It's called Oineg Shabbos if you have a kol.
Well, Oineg involves various foods. Oineg involves various food. The halacha is that the kavod of the yoim is bigger than the kavod of the laila. In other words, you have to make an extra effort to eat more and better food during the day than at night. The day's kavod is greater than the night's kavod. Because the oineg is, as the Aruch HaShulchan explains, I was once trying to figure out, even though they take that from the Gemara doesn't explain why. Because the kavod is greater the day. Why? Aruch HaShulchan, I think, says, because oineg is more shaykh during the day than it is at night.
You're tired.
Yeah, maybe you're tired, or maybe it's short. The day you have the whole day. The oineg is more shaykh during the day, so you have to have good food on Shabbos. That's what we have cholent, and we have yaptze, and we have. If you're from Poland, then you may even have galer. You know what galer is? It's made from the feet of the cow. It's like a jelly.
Also have it.
Yeah?
Hungarians
They call it pecha.
Yeah.
With garlic, with pepper.
It's very delicious. My
Very
grandmother
delicious.
used to make it.
Yeah. So these kind of delicacies you have during the day, not during the night. Usually.
It's cold.
The galer, yeah. The galer is cold. Yeah. Then you have schnapps, and you have all the other stuff. Okay. So what do we see so far? So this is the example that the Riz says. You see, Sfeka doesn't work when one is in the guf, one is in the taruvas. The other Rishonim say, wait a minute. That case is a davar sheish lo matirim anyway. You're right, Sfeka didn't work over there because it's a davar sheish lo matirim, not because of your explanation that one is in the guf and one is in the taruvas. So there's no raya from that. Rabbeinu Tam actually says it would be okay. Yeah. Why? But Eid Gemara says it's also. The Gemara says it's also. So the Rabbeinu Tam says, you know why the Gemara says it's also? That Gemara is talking about a vada isur. You only have one suffix. It says Beitza Shenolda. Yeah. We don't have a. He says, don't say we have a suffix legabedat Shabbos or Yontav. No, it's also because we know for sure when it was laid. The only suffix is one taruvas. The taruvas is one suffix. He says so. Don't tell me about Sfeka. He says Sfeka would be mutter in that kind of a case. If you had a real Sfeka, he says if you really had a suffix in the egg when it was laid, it would be mutter. For Nagemar, there's no right because Nagemar is talking about a vada yisr, not a suffix yisr. So two ways of learning that Gemara. When Tam says it's talking about a vada yisr, if you have a suffix yisr, you have a Sfeka. No raya from that Gemara. And the Ri says no, that's talking about even a suffix yisr. So therefore, if it's a suffix Sfeka is also raya from there. The other Rishonim say, even if you're right, the Ri says, even if you're right, and we agree with you, la halacha, and that's how we pass him, that in a Sfeka like that, it's also, it's not a real Sfeka. It's not, in that case, it's only for a different reason. In that case, it's because it's a davar sheish lo matirim by the eggs. Wait the next day. But the Maisa, the Mechaber, and others hold that when one suffix is in the guf and one suffix is in the taruvot, it's not a real Sfeka. That we do hold, and that's taken from the Ri. But we still have to, we didn't explain yet why. We didn't fully explain why it's not an acceptable Sfeka. Yes.
I'm not quite sure how that is. Because of the Rashishlo material, therefore the Taaruvot doesn't constitute a suffix. You want the second suffix to be the Taaruvot, because once it's a davar sheish lo matirim, you don't have that suffix.
Once you have a davar sheish lo matirim, then the Sfeka doesn't apply. It won't help you.
Anymore?
Doesn't help anymore.
So by the right side does help, but davar sheish lo matirim it doesn't.
Yeah, it's a durabana. It's an isur durabana. No,
right. Sfeka by the right side is would help. But even though this one is a Rabbanan Sfeka doesn't help, it's more humridic than a right side.
Yeah, remember we had the machlokes. Why is it that? Does it apply even in an isur durabana? Yes, because you could wait. And that was the whole idea of davar sheish lo matirim. If it's something that could wait, we don't allow whatever is usually allowed. Yeah, it's an extra chumrah. It's not a big deal. Why should we make it batal now? Yeah, there's different ways of learning davar sheish lo matirim. It's a machlokes. What's davar sheish lo matirim? Why is it also now? Just because. So well, anyway, so that's what they say. Legabe the Riz explain. Legabe the Gemara. Why the Gemara would be in Gemara's example would be also. Okay, so these are the three kinds of Sfekas. Now let's discuss a little bit this third one. We said that suffix in the guf and a suffix in the taruvas is not a real Sfeka. Why not? The Ramah simply says, and this is based on the Isur Beheter, that once you determine something to be Asr, right, the guf, once you've said this is a suffix, Asr mutter, and you've determined obviously suffix Sfeka deraisa lechumra, right? once you said that, you cannot take another type of Isser, suffix I should say, and undo that, what you've just done. You've just made a determination. You just made a halacha, a psak. This thing is Asr. Where are you going to have a Sfeka? Because something else comes along and tells you, now it's a new suffix. That new suffix has nothing to do with the first suffix because the first suffix is gone. It's gone. You've made a resolution. It's Asr. You've said it's Asr. You had a suffix, it's Asr. Right? And therefore there's no room to add or to diminish the first suffix by introducing this suffix of Taaruvot that has nothing to do with the first suffix. That's how he attacks it. He said, you explained it very nice too. Yeah. I like the way you said it because it clarifies it even more. But the Ramah is taking it from a different angle, and you'll see why. Even though what you say is 100% right, I like it. But you will see soon. But you will see soon why he says that. Now, and he doesn't say it on his own. He takes it based on an Isser Veheter, which we'll see soon, and we'll see why it's important to learn like that. You'll see why in a moment. So that's the Ramah. The Mechaber says very simple. The Mechaber, as we have explained in the past, he holds that it's not a Sfeka, because Sfekas are not about lumping Sfekas one on top of another. Here I have one. Here I have two. Here I have three. It's not about lumping them. A Sfeka is a new concept. It tells me that this particular item that I'm questioning is a big question. It has more than one suffix as to its entity, as to its essence. Is it really treif? Is it really usr? When you say one suffix is in the guf and one is in the taruvas, it's lumping. He calls it lumping. That's not what we're talking about. Sfeka is a creation. In other words, it's a yitzir, it's a hefza, it's something completely different. It really questions the essence of what I'm talking about. Is it really treif? There's so much to say about the original one, which, by the way, in your explanation fits even better into this. There's so much to say about the original one, whether it's mutar or asr. But once I introduce something else, I'm not talking about this original anymore. Now I'm talking about a completely separate thing. That's lumping. Sfekas that have nothing to do are not related to each other. Is that clear? Did I make myself clear? I mean, Mechaber also says, from a different angle, says we don't lump it. Sfeka is something by itself. It's a real question regarding the original Isser. This is not original.
It's not really clear to me because it has lots of doubts about it. It's the same concept.
No, you're right that there's more than one doubt here in this room. But Mechaber says, you know what a real Sfeka is? Sfeka is powerful stuff. It's going to tell you that this is going to be mutar. So we have to really be in agreement as to if this is a true Sfeka. So the Mechaber says when something has a suffix in its essence, and then you tell me, by the way, there's an additional suffix over here because that thing that we're in doubt about got mixed into Taaruvos. That has nothing to do with the original thing. I want to have two Sfekas on the original thing if it's Asr or Mutar. Like with the Isha, remember with the woman? We're talking about one goof, one thing. Did she not? And she did. Was it forced on her or not forced on her? I'm talking about the exact same thing. I'm not talking about two different kinds of doubts. Is this Asr or Mutar? Well, even if it's Asr, it got mixed in over here. Mixed in over here, that doesn't help me. It doesn't minimize, it doesn't diminish.
Isn't it the goof?
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. Right now we're talking... No, so the Mechaber says because when you have one suffix in a goof and one suffix in a taruvas, that is not an allowable Sfeka, right? So that's really the first klal, even though it occupies several klalim in the shach, as I'll explain. It all concerns this last seif over here. Okay, seif test. Even though there's a seif yud afterwards, but this particular seif is the one that deals with this, where you have a suffix in the goof and a suffix in taruvot. It's not a Sfeka. So the Mechaber gives his own reasoning, right? That if you don't lump them, it has to be about the same thing. Now, the Rashba and other Rishonim explain it slightly differently than the Ramah, and also it's very important. And this is also taken from, this is similar to the Ramah, but a little bit different. and they use a term called kam dina. Okay? They're saying that once you've made a din, you've resolved the status of the first suffix, you can't undo it. Once the suffix of once this first suffix has been resolved, I have answered it, I said it's also, I can't undo it.
That's the Ramon.
Similar. Yeah, you're going to see, very, very similar. Yeah. Kam dina. Now, what do I learn from kam dina? A whole new machlokes springs out of that. Because kam dina says that once I've determined the halacha of something, I cannot undo it. So what would happen, or would it make a difference if I didn't know about the first suffix and the two Sfekas came about at the same time? Remember the famous Niddah? You saw in Basar b'cholav, we saw it in Taaruvot. Niddah sometimes makes a difference, right? Remember Niddah? I knew about it, then it happened again. Something similar happened. So would it make a difference? Because if you're saying that something has been established as an Isser, and I can't undo it, I appreciate that. But what if I didn't paskin yet? I get the two Sfekas at the same time. On that there's a machlokes. Everybody seems to hold, and that's what the Shach talks about in Klal Aleph, on the Ramah, saying that one in the Guf and one in Taaruvot is not a Sfeka, even if it's lo noida. Even if they come about simultaneously, it doesn't make a difference.
It's still possible.
Yeah. Why? And that's what we take. That's where you. Let me see if I can find it here. That's where the Ramah takes it from, which is a little bit different than the Rashba, because he takes the pashtus of the lashon of the Isur Beheter, which says when the two Sfekas are in two separate things, they don't constitute a double suffix. That's all. He didn't. Isur Beheter doesn't really talk about kam dina. See, when you introduce the words a din has been established, then you're opening a Pandora box. Well, what if it was not known until later on? So based on the Isur Beheter, in the way the Ramah learns, which is more, I was explaining in the Ramah a little bit of both. But really, if we don't use them, or let's just say use the Rishonim, the Isur Beheter, you see where it's more simplified. The Guf and the Taaruvot are two separate things. They don't mesh. They don't go along together. And then you can add what you said too. But when you introduce the Rashba's additional emphasis of kam dina, then you ask yourself, well, wait a minute, what happens if I didn't know about the first suffix until the second suffix was discovered? Right? So on that the Shach spends quite a few lines explaining that it will not make too much of a difference according to the Ramah, right? Or according to the Mechaber, maybe, we don't know. Except that there's a Beis Yosef, believe it or not, in another Siman altogether, in Hilchos Treifos, that seems to be saying that if it's lo noida, it would be a completely different halacha. Based on that Beis Yosef, we would say that the Mechaber would be mechalek between noida and lo noida of these two, even though he's saying like the Ramah. He is saying like the Ramah. Guf, Taaruvot are two separate, they don't count as Sfeka. But based on that, of the Rashba, it appears that the Beis Yosef would hold that it would make a difference if it's a lo noida. The Shach Lemaisa, the Taz also, everybody seems to be saying we're machmer. We don't distinguish between noida and lo noida. They're two separate Sfekas, they don't count as a Sfeka, but in a Hefsed Merubah, the Shach says you can rely on that. You can rely on that svara that would enable you to distinguish between noida and lo noida. So if you have the two Sfekas happening at the same time, even though one is Guf and one is Taaruvot, the Hefsed Merubah, he says, the Tzorech Suda or the Tzorech Mitzvah, you would be able to rely on it. That's good to know. Yeah. This Beis Yosef that I told you.
Do you have an example of a case, two of us rose at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, you didn't know about it until later on. It's not like you knew about. Yeah, it's just you didn't know until later on.
You didn't know about it, or it won't know.
Oh, gewaldig! You're doing good today, Ilan.
Thank you.
There's a machlokes which I didn't get to yet. I have to go through it myself. Very interesting what Ilan just pointed out. there is a diyun, I should say. There is a discussion. Diyun, I guess, discussion in the poskim. Does Niddah mean b'metzias, or that I actually have had to observe it at two different times? In other words, metzias means that
It's not knowable. It wasn't knowable.
No, metzias means that these two sfekas occur in two stages naturally. Naturally, the sfekas occur. Whether I know it or not doesn't make a difference. They naturally occur in two separate stages, and therefore they're separate.
So then you're not knowing it wouldn't.
So it doesn't make a difference whether I know or not.
Right.
They occur at separate stages. Or does it mean that it's by observation? And then, of course, it makes a difference whether I knew or not.
Right.
So there's
my question was a different one, because I was thinking of the case. How would you have a case where you didn't know and it became at the same time? Because let's say someone had knowledge of it, you didn't know, you have it in the Taaruvot, and he comes and says one of those things the Taaruvot might be. So now you gain knowledge of it after it's already in Taaruvot. For you,
Right.
it's Sfeka, it's same, but for him it's not.
No, for him it's not.
So that's why my question was: does it mean you didn't know it, or it wasn't known?
Yeah.
If he knew it and I didn't know it, he's not allowed to eat it. I am.
No. It was not known.
It was not known. So, once he knows it,
Exactly. Once it's known, it's
help
known.
that it
No, it doesn't
becomes
help.
known as
Exactly.
something.
No. Exactly.
Oh.
So this Bis Yosef that would say that Niddah would make a difference holds that even according to the remember the Rabbi Yitzchak, who holds that Sfeka didn't help by eggs over there in Gemara, he would agree by this case where it was Niddah. That's what the Bis Yosef says, that if it was only Niddah lachar teruvos, that it would be okay Sfeka. But the Dark Moshe disagrees. He says from the East of a Heter, it's not mashma like that. He says it doesn't make a difference. In other words, because the East of a Heter is very simple. The two are separate; they don't belong with each other, and that's it. We did see also a difference between the Mechaber and the Ramah regarding Isur D'Rabbanan. By Isur D'Rabbanan, the Ramah would be Mekel and the Mechaber would be Machmer. And that has to do with how you explain the reason for Sfeka here. Let me see if I can remember here the whole situation again. That was another Machlokes. Yeah, the Ramah basically says like this. Based on the Isur B'Heter, the first suffix makes it Asur. What is it Asur? It's Asur D'Oraisa. So you can't undo it, like the way we explained it. Or, once it's determined to be Asur, you can't introduce any additional Sfekas. What if it's an Isur D'Rabbanan? So they want to explain, I think the Shach also says so, that if it's an Isur D'Rabbanan, then the Ramah would agree that you can be Mekel, then it's no longer a Safek D'Oraisa, it's a Safek D'Rabbanan. But according to the Mechaber, that the whole reason is like the Rashba says, Kam Dina, once you've made the Psak, you can't really undo it or change it, right? And Isur D'Rabbanan doesn't make a difference. That's the reason. Or the other way around, not like the Rashba, in other words, that they simply do not mix. Sfeka is a separate Chefze. You can't lump Sfekas, they can't make. So it doesn't really make a difference if it's an Isur D'Rabbanan or not. They just don't mix. Either way, it seems to be that there would be a chiluk between the two of them on Isur D'Rabbanan. All right, let's just finish up with just two small ideas over here. What happens if the two Sfekas, and this is again going on with the Shach, based on the Ramah. What if the two Sfekas are in the Guf? We had a Safek in the Guf and in Taaruvos we had two Sfekas in the Guf originally, in the case of the Gemara in Ksubas by a woman, and we had two Sfekas of Taaruvos. But what if the two Sfekas are in the Guf? However, Loi Noidu, we just finished saying that there appears to be, or there may be a chilu between Noida and Lo Noidu by one suffix being in the Guf and one suffix being in the Taaruvos. But it was not known till the end. Does it or does it not make a difference? What if the two Sfekas are in the Guf? Which is great. Okay? The two Sfekas are in the Guf, which is what we want. But it's Lo Noidu Beyachad. Will that make it any worse? So the Taz, there's several complaints here about this proposition because it's very hard to find something like that. It's very hard to find two Sfekas on the Guf which do not come about at the same time. Remember, it's about the same Guf. Okay? But the Pri Megadim has an example. The Pri Megadim's example is, you have a situation, let me see if I can remember here. Yeah, a piece of meat that is a suffix treif or not. And later on, there's a new suffix that developed about the same suffix treif, whether if it's nifselo me'achila, if it's no longer edible or not. Somehow he just came up with a scenario, situation.
Yeah.
So it's concerning the same piece of meat, but it's a suffix that came about later.
Yeah.
In other words, it can be. They say the Pinnacle says you can have situations where you have in the same goof, the fake Sfeka goof, and it's not always, even though usually they happen at the same time. So that's why the Shach talks about if you do have a situation where you do have two Sfekas on the goof, which is good, but they're not Niddah at the same time, it could be a problem.
Now, I don't understand what would be a problem to construct. What about if you're Sfeka, like you said, and it was with milk, or there's a topic whether it was with kilk, it was with the vela maybe.
Yeah.
So you have a later suffix here also. You have a suffix whether it's a treif or not.
Right.
Now you have another suffix, maybe it was in a pot that was used.
Yeah, but that's a different suffix, yeah.
But it's on the same goal.
No, it's a separate. It's a separate kind of suffix. I think we may talk about that another time. I think that is an example.
So that would be more similar to
That's an example where if you have a suffix, I think somebody brings down that example as follows. I think, not for sure, where if it was cooked or not in milk or not, we still say it's not a Sfeka because one is beguf and one is in taaruvos of sorts, but the k'dera is muteres.
Milk or from meat?
Whatever it was, was that k'dera did not become aser as a result of that suffix. Somehow, that's what I saw. I saw that somewhere, that they bring that down, that will not constitute a Sfeka ligabe the food, because it's two separate things.
Because that would be again.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. Exactly, I think so. Yeah. But the k'dera would be muteres.
But the taaruvos was to be, in our case, taaruvos was something that permits because it became a taaruvos, it might be permitted.
Yeah.
But here the taaruvos is with asers.
Yeah, because on the k'dera I would have I think on the k'dera you would have a Sfeka. You know what I mean? But legabe the two, you may not have it.
I see.
I think that's what it is. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. I think that's what it is. Yeah. So anyway, so this is a good question. We like the fact that the two Sfekas on the goof, but here we're asking, would it also apply if it's lo noida? And apparently the Ramah would not be mater Sfeka because of Kamdina, as we said before. In other words, once the din has been established about this goof, later on you have another one, even if it's about the same goof, but it's later on, it's already aser. It would have to be at the same time according to the Ramah. Why by taaruvos we allow, even though they don't happen, taaruvos don't happen at the same time? Because by taaruvos we're more makel because it's all of the Rabbanan anyway. That's what I saw somebody explain. By taaruvos we are more makel, even though the two taaruvos happen at different times, and it's two taaruvos, but the whole idea of the taaruvos is the Rabbanan, that we're machmer. So therefore we're more makel by taaruvos than we would be in the case of two Sfekas on one goof at separate times. Okay, just to finish up over here, it is important the Shach says that the two Sfekas be on the same goof, and therefore, if you have an example of a chicken, a hen I should say, that laid an egg, and you have a suffix legabe the hen, if it's treif or not. And we have a suffix about the hen now, the suffix treifa. Now if you're dealing with a potential treifa hen, the egg that develops this chicken will be treif too. But you have here a second suffix. Was the egg fully developed before the suffix treifa came up, surfaced? Because if the egg was already fully developed, the hen does not affect it. The fact that the hen became treif after the egg is fully developed, the egg is protected. It's only when the egg is forming, once we say that there's a suffix treif on the hen. So now we have a Sfeka, a suffix legabe the hen, and even if you want to say it's treif, maybe the egg was already fully developed. You hear? That's what he brings down.
So that would be a proper Sfeka?
Huh?
That would be a proper Sfeka legabe the egg?
No, we don't allow Sfeka.
Oh, we don't say Sfeka.
We don't say Sfeka here. Because it's not a Sfeka on the same goof. One is on the egg and one is on the hen.
Exactly.
You see that? So the Shach adds, and this is all based on what we've just learned, that it has to be an exact same goof. Otherwise, here there are two separate things. We don't allow Sfeka here.
Because granted, ultimately, if the hen was treif, it will affect the group of the egg.
It would.
But the doubt as to whether or not goes on the hen and not on the egg.
Yes. Initially, doubt goes on the hen.
The doubt is attached to the hen.
Yes.
And whether or not now the egg becomes affected with respect to that suffix is a consequence of whether or not the hen.
Yeah, it may be, yeah. So that's also a similar example of two Sfekas that are Sfeka, but we don't allow it. Comes along Klal 3, and we have 36 to go. We have 36, right? Comes along Klal 3 and adds one more detail. That even this Sfeka, if this egg were to be mixed in 1,000, you also would not allow it. That's what
yeah. It's not the Rashi material. It's the Rashi minion.
No, because of Safek Beguf and Safek Betaruvas.
Oh, you mean, yeah, but no.
We're back to Safek Beguf and Safek Betaruvas. In other words, even though we had a potential Sfeka which we disallowed because it's not in the same goof, now if it's mixed in Taruvas, we still retain the original klal that this would be a Safek Beguf and Safek Betaruvas.
I'm just saying, what it's the 1,000, why it doesn't become a Sfeka
Yeah,
in the
because
1,000?
Davar Shabamina. Yeah, yes, of course. Yeah, but we would not allow it or exclude that Davar Shabamina because of Sfeka, because it would come back to the klal we had before. Similarly, that this is a typical situation where one suffix is in the goof, in the hen, even though it's the egg, but it's not the egg. It's like you said, it's back to the hen, and here we have a suffix teruvus. So in other words, we don't gain anything by, even though we have the possible Sfeka of chicken, egg, what, when, we don't gain anything by that it's mixed now into 1,000. You still have retained the original problem or difficulty that one suffix is really in the goof. To begin with, we're beginning with a suffix in the chicken, in the hen. And now we have a suffix in the taruvas. It's forget about the egg. Right? And because of that...
Are you boiling the hen or the egg?
No, the egg.
The egg.
But nevertheless, we're still going back, retaining...
Are you still saying that you don't know whether the egg would develop?
Still saying, but you might say, I have 3 Sfekas. No. Yeah. We're retaining the original Isser here, of Isser in the goof, suffix in the goof, suffix Isser in the goof, the hen, and a suffix taruvas, and therefore we don't allow this Sfeka. Okay.
So they just don't add. 2 Sfekas that each by itself cannot affect it, do not add up to...
Do not add up, true, because it's not in the same goof. Right. All right, I think we can stop over here. We shall continue Thursday.
Very fast.